When blood turns into your prosecutor, you don't just fight a case, you fight an entire legacy of betrayal. Chosen ones. Let me tell you something chilling but undeniable. Nearly 70% of wrongful convictions in courtrooms involve false testimony. And many times it doesn't come from strangers, but from people close enough to know your every weakness. Now imagine this. The very people who share your DNA, the ones who should defend you to the end, sitting in court as paid actors, spitting rehearsed lies against you. Not because truth was missing, but because money changed hands. This isn't just a story of legal warfare, it's a story of bloodline treachery. Your own family didn't just stab you in the back. They signed the receipt, handed it to the court, and smiled while watching the knife twist. And here's the twist that even they didn't expect. Police aren't blind. They've seen too many liars try to play Shakespeare on the witness stand. They know when a testimony is bought and paid for. What makes it darkly humorous is this. Your family thought they were the directors of this grand courtroom drama. But the performance was so overacted, so poorly scripted, that even the janitor in the courthouse could tell it was fake. Imagine selling your soul only to forget the lines when the spotlight hits. So now the stage has flipped. The ones who plotted your downfall are the ones under the harsh light of exposure. And the suspense isn't whether you'll survive this, it's how fast their own lies will drag them into the pit they dug for you. Stay with me, because this isn't just another courtroom story. This is betrayal, wrapped in family ties, money trails, and the kind of twisted irony that makes you wonder, if blood is thicker than water, why did they try to drown you with it? Number 1. The police discovered the lie was too perfect. The police discovered the lie was too perfect. That's the kind of thing most people don't think about when they hear a courtroom testimony. On the surface, perfection sounds convincing. A story told without hesitation, every detail lined up neatly, every fact seemingly airtight. It feels like the truth. But in reality, that's exactly what makes it suspicious. Real memories don't come out flawless. People pause, people hesitate, people forget little things. When someone recalls a genuine event, their words carry natural imperfections because the human mind doesn't replay life like a movie. It recalls it in fragments, emotions, and scattered moments. The testimony against you was too polished, too rehearsed, almost as if it was written in advance. That's what raised the first red flag. Officers and investigators are trained to notice when a story lacks the natural rough edges of truth. The so-called witnesses weren't remembering, they were performing. Every word seemed like it had been practiced in the mirror 100 times. And the thing about performances is once you see the script underneath, it's impossible to unsee it. What your family failed to realize is that the police aren't just listening to words, they're studying tone, body language, timing, and consistency. A true memory unfolds effortlessly, but a lie has to be maintained. When the police compared earlier statements with courtroom declarations, the cracks began to show. The same phrases repeated too perfectly, the same timelines told with robotic accuracy, the same absence of human uncertainty. It didn't add up. Instead of looking trustworthy, it looked engineered. And that's where the whole case began to collapse. The very perfection they thought would protect the lie became the biggest evidence of deception. Police understand that truth has texture. It bends, it wavers, it even contradicts itself in small ways, because that's how real memory works. Lies, on the other hand, try to erase those inconsistencies, and in doing so, erase authenticity altogether. So what was meant to trap you actually freed you. The flawless testimony didn't convince, it exposed. And the moment the police caught the scent of something rehearsed, it opened the door to deeper investigations, financial trails, and motives that revealed who was really pulling the strings. The lie was too perfect, and in court, perfection can be fatal. Number 2, your family paid for silence, but bought exposure instead. Your family paid for silence, but what they actually bought was exposure. That's the irony of bribery. They thought money would lock lips, erase doubt, and guarantee loyalty. But money is the loudest witness in any courtroom. It leaves a trail that never sleeps. Every withdrawal, every cash exchange, every sudden spike in someone's lifestyle, it all becomes evidence. Bribes don't vanish into thin air. They stain everything they touch. Instead of sealing your fate, the money trail ended up revealing theirs. The thing about bribes is that they always carry fingerprints. Maybe it's a bank transaction that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's a sudden vacation someone took right after testifying. Maybe it's the fact that someone who is struggling financially suddenly started spending beyond their means. Police are trained to notice these shifts, and once they spot them, silence becomes impossible. The very hush money that was supposed to bury you instead began whispering louder than the lies themselves. What makes this betrayal even sharper is that your family underestimated the intelligence of the system. They assumed money had the final word, but in the end, money only created more words, statements, reports, and investigations. The cash didn't buy loyalty, it bought suspicion. The more they spent to keep the truth hidden, the more suspicious their actions appeared. And suspicion is the seed that always grows into exposure. At its core, bribery is arrogance. It's the belief that truth can be bent, that justice can be purchased, that the world runs on secrecy rather than accountability. But what they didn't account for is that money doesn't erase guilt, it records it. Once the police traced the payments, it no longer mattered what was said in court. The truth had already shifted focus from your actions to theirs. So the outcome is simple but devastating for them. In trying to silence others, they gave themselves away. In trying to bury you with money, they dug their own grave. And the deeper they tried to bury, the more evidence piled on top of them. Your family didn't just pay for silence. They financed the very investigation that exposed them. The bribe didn't secure their lies. It stamped their names on the crime. Number 3. They weaponized courtrooms against you. They weaponized courtrooms against you. That's not just betrayal. It's a calculated attempt to twist justice into a tool of destruction. A courtroom is supposed to be the place where truth rises, where lies collapse under scrutiny, and where fairness rules above all else. But when your own family decided to drag your name into it, they weren't interested in truth. They were interested in power, control, and revenge. They turned the very system designed to protect you into their battlefield. The betrayal runs deep because this wasn't strangers with a grudge, it was bloodline. They knew the weight of the law, and instead of respecting it, they used it as a shield for their lies. They dressed falsehood in legal clothing and tried to pass it off as truth. By paying off people to stand against you, they didn't just attack your reputation, they polluted the integrity of the justice system itself. That's why the discovery by police is so significant. It isn't just about your innocence, it's about exposing how far people are willing to go when they allow jealousy and greed to rule their hearts. What makes it even more twisted is that courtrooms carry a kind of finality. A guilty verdict doesn't just shame someone, it marks them for life. Your family knew that, and yet they were willing to let you live under that shadow forever. It wasn't just about proving a point, it was about erasing you, rewriting your story so that the world would forever see you through the stain of their lies. That kind of betrayal is heavier than anything a stranger could ever inflict. But here's the truth the police couldn't ignore. Lies may enter a courtroom, but they can't hold up under the weight of evidence. The false testimonies, the bought loyalty, the tampered truths, all of it eventually showed itself for what it was. And instead of leaving you marked as guilty, it shifted the spotlight back to them. They exposed themselves as manipulators of justice, people who thought they could hijack the system without consequences. By weaponizing the courtroom against you, your family revealed their true nature to the very institution they tried to control. They didn't just betray you, they betrayed justice itself. And now, justice is turning back on them with a vengeance they never prepared for. Number 4. The lie was too specific to be coincidental. The lie was too specific to be coincidental. Lies that are made up on the spot tend to be vague, because the mind struggles to invent convincing details in real time. But when someone is paid or coached to lie, they often add extra specifics to make their story sound believable. They think the more precise they are, the harder it will be to challenge them. Dates, locations, minor actions, even the tone of conversations. They load every little detail as if stuffing a suitcase for a trip that doesn't exist. That's exactly what happened against you. The problem is, those details become a trap. Each added element increases the chance of contradiction or exposure. A fabricated story can survive if it stays general, but the moment someone starts giving specifics, every tiny piece of the puzzle can be checked against reality. Police noticed this immediately. The timelines were too neat, the events too orderly, and the descriptions too rehearsed. Every specific they offered was like a thread waiting to be pulled, and pulling one thread starts to unravel the whole fabric of a lie. What made it worse for them was the natural inconsistency of human memory. Real people forget things, mix up times, misremember words. Lies that are overspecified, however, cannot flex with reality. When the investigators cross-referenced details, contradictions appeared like cracks in a wall. The more the liars tried to prove their point with these helpful specifics, the more obvious it became that they weren't telling the truth. They were following a script. At the end of the day, specificity was their undoing. Their attempt to make the lie stronger ended up making it weaker, because truth can bend and flow, but lies, especially over-detailed lies, snap under scrutiny. Every fabricated fact left fingerprints that pointed straight to the plan behind it. What was meant to be a convincing story turned into undeniable evidence of orchestration, revealing not just the lie, but the deliberate effort to frame you. The more they insisted on the details, the more the police could see that someone had carefully scripted this against you. The lie's precision exposed its artificial nature, and in doing so, set the stage for your vindication. Number 5. Blood became your accuser. Blood became your accuser. Betrayal by strangers is painful, but betrayal by your own family hits differently. It cuts deeper than anyone else could. Your family isn't just supposed to protect you. They are the ones who carry your history, your memories, your name. When the very people meant to defend you turn into your prosecutors, it shakes everything you believed about loyalty and trust. The pain isn't just emotional, it's structural. Your foundation, the people who should have been your shield, became the weapon pointed at you. The police didn't just uncover false statements, they uncovered a web of treachery running through the people closest to you. They traced motives, financial exchanges, and coordinated testimonies, and what emerged wasn't just evidence of lying, it was evidence of betrayal by blood. The acts of deception weren't random, they were deliberate and orchestrated by the ones who share your DNA. That revelation alone carries weight heavier than any courtroom drama. It shows a family willing to sacrifice you for greed, revenge, or personal gain. What makes it even more staggering is the cold calculation behind it. A stranger might lie out of fear, confusion, or anger, but your family had the knowledge, the access, and the opportunity to protect you. Instead, they chose to manipulate, to conspire, and to falsify the truth. Police don't just look at what's said, they look at patterns, consistency, and intent. The intent here was unmistakable. Blood that should have shielded you became the instrument of your potential ruin. This isn't only a legal exposure, it's a moral collapse. Every false statement, every manipulated testimony, every backhanded act reflects not just on individuals, but on the integrity of the family as a whole. And while your innocence shines through, the family's betrayal becomes the undeniable headline. Police records now hold more than just your story. They hold the story of your family's treachery, proving that the greatest threat sometimes doesn't come from the outside world, but from the very people whose love should have been unconditional. Blood became your accuser, and in doing so revealed a truth far more devastating than any courtroom drama. The ones who should have defended you were the ones trying to destroy you. The justice system caught it all, leaving the betrayal exposed and undeniable. Number 6. Their hatred of you was stronger than their love of truth. Their hatred of you was stronger than their love of truth. When the police dug into the case, they weren't just following transactions or testimony, they were tracing intent. What became crystal clear was that the driving force behind every lie, every payment, every manipulation wasn't fear or confusion, it was pure, unfiltered hatred. Your family wasn't interested in justice, they were invested in destruction. They wanted to see you fail, not because it served any lawful purpose, but because your existence threatened something inside them they couldn't face. This kind of motive is rare and dangerous. Most people who lie do it to protect themselves or gain advantage. But what the police uncovered here was far more insidious. Deliberate targeting born of resentment and envy, a desire to harm that outweighed any sense of fairness or morality. Every false testimony, every orchestrated act of deception pointed back to a singular emotional truth. They were willing to sacrifice the integrity of the legal system just to watch you fall. The lies weren't sloppy or random. They were meticulously planned, driven by the intensity of their feelings toward you. Hatred like this carries a unique signature. It's visible in the small things, the over-specific details, the rehearsed stories, the way they tried to manipulate others into compliance. It's visible in the way they ignored evidence that didn't support their narrative. Police don't just investigate facts, they investigate patterns and intent. And the pattern here was unmistakable. The family's focus wasn't truth, it was your ruin. Their moral compass had flipped entirely. It didn't point toward justice or honesty, it pointed toward the obliteration of your credibility, reputation, and peace of mind. This revelation changes the entire perspective of the case. The money trail was significant, but motive explains why the money was spent at all. Hate fueled every action, and hate can't be bought or hidden. It corrodes relationships, clouds judgment, and makes calculated cruelty possible. Police saw that, and in doing so, they understood something most people never do. The deepest betrayals come from those who feel they have the most to gain from your absence. Their hatred of you became the engine of deception, the hidden force behind every lie, and the reason this case exposed not just false testimony, but the darkest corners of human emotion. Justice wasn't just investigating lies. They were investigating the lengths people will go when hatred outweighs truth. Number 7. Lies are easy to tell but hard to maintain. Lies are easy to tell but hard to maintain. In the heat of a courtroom, every statement is under a microscope. What might work as a casual lie in conversation falls apart when repeated under pressure, scrutinized by trained eyes and ears. The people who testified against you weren't just lying once. They had to repeat their story multiple times, often in slightly different forms, and that's where the cracks began to appear. Consistency is the soul of credibility, and theirs had none. Every retelling created new contradictions, little fractures that grew into glaring gaps. Police didn't just listen to the words, they dissected them. They compared earlier statements to later ones, text messages to bank records, casual remarks to courtroom testimony. Every misaligned detail, every hesitation, every attempt to cover a mistake with another story became evidence that the narrative wasn't natural, wasn't truthful. Lies demand effort and memory. They require a kind of constant vigilance that most people can't sustain, especially under pressure. The more they tried to stay consistent, the more obvious it became that the story was constructed, rehearsed, and ultimately fake. Even small inconsistencies become significant when someone is being watched closely. Dates get swapped, minor actions are exaggerated or omitted, tone and emphasis shift, all without the liar even realizing it. Police notice these things because truth has a rhythm, a natural ebb and flow, while lies are stiff, calculated, and repetitive. They might be rehearsed to the point of perfection on paper, but in execution, human imperfection betrays the intent behind them. The inconsistencies didn't just show that the story was false. They showed that someone had a hidden agenda, a motive they were desperate to conceal. What the liars failed to understand is that every time they repeated their story, they strengthened the case against themselves. The courtroom became a mirror reflecting the dishonesty back at them. Each contradiction amplified the truth, making it impossible to hide behind their carefully constructed performance. Police didn't just hear lies. They read between the cracks and saw the orchestration, the coaching, and the desperation. Lies might be easy to tell once, but sustaining them under scrutiny is impossible. And that impossibility became your liberation. Their inability to maintain the lie turned the courtroom into a revelation. The falsehoods they thought would destroy you instead destroyed their credibility. Every inconsistency pushed the truth forward until it could no longer be ignored, proving that lies might be simple to speak, but they are impossible to defend. Number 8. You weren't just on trial. Your bloodline was. You weren't just on trial. Your bloodline was. The moment your family stepped into that courtroom, trying to frame you with lies and manipulated testimony, they weren't just attacking you. They were exposing themselves. Every fabricated story, every overplayed detail, every attempt to shift blame reflected more on them than it ever could on you. What they thought would damage your reputation became a lens revealing their true character. Greed, jealousy, and desperation etched into every word. The courtroom doesn't just record statements, it exposes patterns, motives, and intent. Police and investigators pick up on these subtleties, and your family's actions created a trail that could not be ignored. In trying to make you appear guilty, they displayed the lengths they were willing to go, the corners they were willing to cut, and the deception they embraced. Every lie became a confession of moral compromise. Every manipulated witness a testament to their willingness to betray blood for personal gain. The attempt to control the narrative backfired spectacularly. In trying to turn the law against you, they turned the law into a mirror reflecting their own corruption. Their reputations, their integrity, and the values they claimed to hold up in private became visible to everyone watching. The courtroom, meant to judge facts, ended up judging character. And it wasn't your character under the microscope. What makes this so extraordinary is the depth of exposure. Your family didn't just fail to convince, they inadvertently provided a complete X-ray of their intentions. Police didn't just see a lie, they saw coordination, planning, and motive, all pointing back to people who were supposed to stand for you, not against you. Every action, every payment, every coached testimony became a piece of evidence not just of the conspiracy, but of the moral bankruptcy behind it. In the end, your trial became more than a fight for innocence. It became a revelation of bloodline, showing that the people who should have defended you were the ones willing to compromise themselves to destroy you. The courtroom became their own exposure chamber, turning their effort to ruin you into a testament of their corruption. Your family's attempt to frame you revealed more than your innocence. It revealed the truth about them, louder than any argument or evidence ever could. Number 9. Police saw patterns they couldn't ignore. Police saw patterns they couldn't ignore. The lies weren't isolated incidents, they formed a rhythm, a repetition that revealed intention. The same phrases appeared across testimonies, the same details cropped up at the same moments, and the timing of events aligned too neatly to be accidental. Even the financial movements surrounding the case followed a pattern, payments, withdrawals, and sudden transfers coinciding with key testimonies. It wasn't random, and police recognized it immediately. Patterns have a way of speaking the truth louder than words, and in this case, they told a story your family tried to hide. What makes patterns so revealing is that humans are inherently inconsistent. Even well-rehearsed lies usually leave gaps, shifts, or contradictions. When investigators notice repetition that shouldn't exist naturally, identical wording, synchronized actions, mirrored excuses, it signals coordination. It's the fingerprint of orchestration. Each coincidence alone might have been dismissed, but when all the pieces aligned perfectly across statements, financial evidence, and behavior, the pattern became undeniable. It was no longer a question of whether someone lied. It was a question of who was orchestrating the lie and why. The financial side of the pattern was just as telling. Sudden withdrawals, timely payments to key witnesses, and unusual transactions all fit into the same rhythm as the courtroom testimony. It was a map of influence, a guide showing who was directing the false narrative and when. Investigators didn't need confessions to see the structure. The pattern spoke for itself. Every repetition, every mirrored action, every synchronized event reinforced the fact that this was a calculated attempt to manipulate the case, not a collection of isolated missteps. Patterns are hard to fake because they demand consistency across multiple dimensions: words, actions, and timing. The police knew that. They also knew that the more complex the lie, the more likely patterns would emerge. And that's exactly what happened. Your family's plan wasn't hidden. It was too organized, too deliberate, and too repeated. What they thought would conceal the truth instead exposed it. In the end, the lies didn't matter as much as the patterns they created. The coordination, repetition, and timing revealed the conspiracy in stark relief. The police could see the hidden hand guiding events, and the truth, organized and persistent, shone through. Their strategy of manipulation became their undoing because patterns never lie. Number 10. Their desperation made them sloppy. Their desperation made them sloppy. When people act out of panic or fear, they lose precision, and every rushed decision becomes a mark against them. Your family thought they could manipulate the situation without leaving traces, that they could orchestrate lies and payments without anyone noticing the inconsistencies. But desperation doesn't hide mistakes, it amplifies them. Every hurried transaction, every misremembered timeline, every poorly coached testimony created a trail that investigators could follow. The lies were meant to be airtight, but in their rush, they overlooked the simplest things. Dates didn't line up, receipts contradicted statements, and minor details that should have been consistent were all over the place. Police and investigators notice patterns like this. When someone is desperate, their actions become frantic, and mistakes pile on top of each other faster than they can cover. Each attempt to fix one slip only exposed another, and every hurried decision left a mark on the evidence chain. Financial movements were particularly revealing. Payments meant to secure loyalty or silence were poorly timed, misrecorded, or easily traceable. Instead of protecting the lie, these transactions highlighted it. The effort to hide you in the narrative instead spotlighted their involvement. Their attempts at secrecy were too hurried, too obvious, and too uncoordinated to pass scrutiny. Each slip added to the case against them, turning their own panic into a self-inflicted trap. Even the coordination of witnesses suffered. Instead of smooth, believable statements, there were contradictions and inconsistencies. The more they pushed to make the story convincing, the more it fell apart. The courtroom became a mirror reflecting their mistakes, and police could see the desperation behind every overplayed line and every poorly rehearsed detail. What was meant to control the narrative instead exposed it. In trying to bury you, they ended up burying themselves. Desperation turned calculated actions into reckless ones. The plan that should have been invisible became impossible to hide. Every error, every contradiction, every poorly executed attempt to manipulate events worked against them. Their sloppiness, fueled by fear and hatred, became the very evidence that confirmed the conspiracy. What they thought was clever strategy was in reality the blueprint of their exposure. Number 11. The law became an unintended witness. The law became an unintended witness. Your family tried to weaponize the courtroom, to turn every rule, procedure, and testimony against you. They believed that by bending the system to their will, they could create a narrative that destroyed your credibility and painted you guilty. But the law is impartial, and in trying to manipulate it, they ended up feeding it the very evidence that exposed their crimes. Every false statement they made didn't just fail to stick, it became perjury, a legal mark that could never be erased. Every payment, every attempt to bribe or sway testimony left a trail that investigators could follow with precision. The courtroom, which they hoped would be their stage for orchestrated lies, became the stage for their own downfall. Rules designed to ensure fairness became tools that revealed their deception. Witnesses they thought they controlled slipped under scrutiny, and their statements, when compared to bank records and other evidence, contradicted each other. What was meant to frame you, instead, framed them. Their own actions, once examined through the lens of law and procedure, became the proof that a conspiracy existed. This is the irony of trying to misuse the legal system. The law isn't passive. It demands documentation, consistency, and accountability. And when someone breaks those rules, intentionally or not, the system doesn't just notice, it records it. Police saw a network of coordination, of payments and testimonies designed to create a false narrative, and every violation became a new piece of evidence. In their efforts to manipulate justice, your family handed it all over. The more they tried to control the outcome, the more the law revealed. Each lie, each financial maneuver, each attempt to pressure a witness became a building block in the case against them. The courtroom that was meant to crush you became their own execution ground. Their strategy of deception was meticulously documented in a system designed to preserve truth, and in that preservation, their exposure was guaranteed. In the end, the law itself became a witness to their greed, hatred, and betrayal. It recorded their every misstep, their every fabrication, and turned what should have been your trial into a clear reflection of their guilt. By trying to use it against you, they ensured that the law would stand not for them, but for the truth, leaving their attempts to destroy you as the very evidence that confirmed their corruption. Number 12. Police aren't just looking at lies, they're looking at motives. Police aren't just looking at lies, they're looking at motives. In this case, the focus shifted from your innocence to the reasons behind your family's actions. It wasn't enough to identify that false statements were made or that payments were exchanged. Investigators needed to understand why people so close to you would go to such lengths to frame you. Motive carries weight far beyond facts or evidence because it reveals intent, and intent shows the heart behind the crime. What the police uncovered wasn't just deception. It was a deliberate, calculated attempt to destroy someone who should have been protected by the very people claiming to care for them. This goes deeper than courtroom strategy. Lies can be rehearsed, fabricated, and repeated, but motives are harder to fake. Investigators started piecing together patterns of behavior, financial decisions, and personal interactions that pointed to an overwhelming desire to harm you. Hatred, jealousy, and greed surfaced as the driving forces behind the false testimonies, and that insight changed the entire scope of the investigation. What had begun as a simple case of perjury and bribery became a study of the psychological breakdown within a family, exposing a sickness in the bloodline itself. Police saw the consequences of those motives reflected in every action. The coordination of lies, the financial manipulations, the pressure placed on witnesses, all of it had one goal: to ruin you. That level of intention required premeditation and a clear understanding of the harm they wanted to cause. The investigation revealed that this wasn't spontaneous or isolated behavior. It was a calculated plan executed by people who knew you best, and because of that knowledge, could cause the most damage. Understanding motive also explained the intensity of their attacks. Lies can fail, but hatred fuels persistence. Police recognized that the stakes for your family weren't just about winning a court case. They were about satisfying deep-seated resentment and control. In unraveling these motives, the investigation shed light not just on what was done to you, but on who these people really are and the darkness that drove them. In the end, motive became the key to the entire case. The lies exposed their actions, but the motives explained why. Police weren't just documenting falsehoods. They were uncovering the psychology of betrayal, revealing a calculated cruelty that only someone close to you could carry out. The case stopped being about the courtroom itself. It became about the intentions that corrupted the very people meant to love and protect you. Number 13. Your innocence exposed their entire network. Your innocence exposed their entire network. The lies told against you didn't exist in isolation. They were part of a much larger pattern of manipulation and deceit. The false testimonies, the orchestrated payments, and the attempts to control the narrative were all connected. And once police began investigating, one small thread pulled on the surface revealed an entire web underneath. What your family thought was a clever way to frame you ended up exposing their repeated patterns of dishonesty and corruption. Every fabricated statement, every altered detail, and every coordinated action became evidence not only of a single attempt to ruin you, but of a history of deception. Police traced connections, compared statements, and followed financial trails that pointed to a network of influence and control your family had maintained. It became clear that the lies against you weren't random or spontaneous. They were part of a system they had perfected over time, one designed to manipulate truth to their advantage whenever it suited them. What made this so damning is that your innocence acted as a mirror, reflecting every attempt at deceit back onto the perpetrators. The more investigators verified your story, the more the falsehoods against you stood out as deliberate fabrications. Each lie, when examined in context, revealed the methods, timing, and coordination that had been employed for years. Your family's attempt to discredit you unintentionally mapped out their entire strategy, leaving the police with a clear picture of how far they were willing to go to protect their interests and control narratives. The unraveling didn't stop at courtroom testimonies or financial transactions. It extended to other people who had been influenced, coerced, or bribed, exposing a chain reaction of manipulation that reached beyond the immediate case. What your family thought was a private, contained attempt to ruin you instead became a public revelation of their tactics, showing patterns of control, coercion, and lies that had likely been used repeatedly. In trying to attack you, they inadvertently revealed themselves. Your innocence wasn't just a defense, it was a lens that illuminated every corner of their network. The falsehoods against you collapsed, and in that collapse, police uncovered a truth far bigger than the courtroom. Your family's lies weren't just about you. They were a blueprint of deception that had been practiced, perfected, and weaponized over time. Your innocence became the tool that dismantled their entire structure. Number 14. The family name became the guilty party. The family name became the guilty party. What they intended as a strike against you, the lies, the payments, the manipulation, ended up reflecting directly on them. The police weren't just investigating isolated actions, they were seeing a pattern that pointed to the entire family's involvement. Every attempt to frame you, every false testimony, every financial maneuver added to the evidence that this was a collective effort, not the work of a single individual. In trying to ruin you, they unknowingly made their own name the focus of scrutiny. What makes this so devastating is that reputation is built over a lifetime, but it can collapse in a single investigation. The courtroom and the evidence exposed a network of betrayal that no amount of explanation could hide. Their name, once a marker of familial authority and trust, became associated with deceit, corruption, and moral compromise. In their effort to obscure your innocence, they illuminated their own guilt. The narrative flipped completely. They thought they were the predators, but under the law and investigation, they became the accused. This exposure wasn't symbolic, it was concrete. Every false statement, every bribe, every orchestrated move left a trace that investigators could follow. The police could see coordination, premeditation, and intent that implicated more than one family member. It wasn't a matter of who acted alone. It was about a collective conspiracy that had tried to bend truth for personal gain. In that sense, the family name itself became the entity under judgment. Their shared actions tied them together, and the law treated them as a unit of accountability, not just isolated actors. The irony is profound. In their attempt to tarnish your name and destroy your credibility, they instead handed over their own. What was meant to be your downfall became the permanent record of their betrayal. Their reputation, carefully maintained for years, was now inseparable from the crimes they tried to commit against you. The truth of their coordinated actions will follow the family name far longer than the lies they hoped would disappear. In the end, the law and the investigation transformed the target. They aimed at you, but the consequences fell squarely on them. The family name, once a shield, became the symbol of guilt, proving that collective betrayal carries consequences that no lie, no manipulation, and no attempt at control can escape. What they tried to destroy, the truth, your credibility, ended up destroying their own legacy instead. The story of your trial is far more than a legal battle. It's a revelation of truth, betrayal, and the limits of human deception. Every lie told against you, every payment made, every false testimony has been exposed not just for what it was, but for what it revealed about the people behind it. Your innocence didn't just survive the courtroom. It became the lens that illuminated greed, hatred, and desperation in your own bloodline. The police saw patterns, traced motives, and uncovered a network of deception that your family thought was invisible. In their attempt to destroy you, they revealed themselves, their actions creating the very evidence that confirmed their betrayal. Your family's attempts to weaponize the law, manipulate witnesses, and conceal their actions failed spectacularly. Lies that were too perfect, too specific, and too rehearsed crumbled under scrutiny. Desperation turned precision into sloppiness, and every effort to control the narrative only strengthened the case for truth. What was meant to stain your reputation became the undoing of theirs. The courtroom didn't just clear your name, it became a mirror showing the depth of their corruption, the sickness of intent, and the dangerous power of hatred when it outweighs truth. This isn't just a story about victory in court, it's a story about the resilience of truth and the power of exposure. Your innocence became the key that unraveled the network built to frame you, proving that no amount of manipulation, bribery, or bloodline betrayal can withstand scrutiny. The very people who thought they were orchestrating your downfall ended up orchestrating their own exposure, leaving their reputation in ruins and their actions documented for the world to see. In the end, the truth didn't just prevail, it demanded recognition, holding everyone accountable and leaving no room for manipulation or cover-up. What was intended as your defeat became the undeniable revelation of your family's corruption, proving once and for all that deception may be easy to tell, but impossible to hide. The lesson is clear. Lies can threaten, hatred can push, but truth, when relentless, will always rise, expose, and prevail. Your story stands as proof that no matter how calculated the betrayal, no matter how sophisticated the plan, the light of truth will shine, and those who try to bury it will ultimately be the ones exposed. If this story blew your mind and gave you chills, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected to the truth no one else dares to reveal. Smash the like button if you feel the weight of what just unfolded. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. We want to hear your perspective. And share this video with anyone who needs to see how lies crumble under truth. Join the community that refuses to be fooled and stays vigilant, because the truth deserves to be seen, heard, and shared. God bless you.